All right, now let's see how can we execute a Java method from our scenario. So last time we did SOAP testing and I did a very small refactoring after that. I basically grouped the corresponding files in folders. So we have this REST and SOAP folder here. And here also I grouped the corresponding classes in one folder. So before we execute a method, we should have a method. So let me create a package first. I will call it method exec for method execution. And let's define a sample class here, method exec. And we want to execute a method here in this class. So let me define a method. Keep in mind that this should be public, otherwise it will not work. And our method will be very simple. It will basically square a parameter that is passed. So return a multiplied by a. And now we need to define a corresponding scenario. So let me create corresponding package, method exec. And I will create a file here, a scenario file. I will call it sample method exec test.json. And here we define our scenario. So we have a scenario name as usual. We have the same structure. And scenario name, let's see, example of method exec, steps, name, which will be example of square method exec. And we also have URL here as we had in case of REST or SOAP. And in case of URL, here we put relative path of this class relatively to this Java package. So from Java package, we go to method exec and then we go to this class, right? So I'll write method exec, and then we write dot and the name of the class, which is method exec, right? So relative to this Java package. Now in case of method, we just specify the name of this method, which is square. So let me copy it. Now we have a request. And in the request, we can specify this value of this parameter, right? So I will specify just 5. So this 5 will go here when we execute it. And we have obviously assertion tabs. And let me leave it empty for now. We will obviously fill it with something, but for now, let me leave it empty. So what do we need else? Well, we need the actual test class, which will run this file, right? This scenario file. This is just for a utility class. This is not a test. So we need to define a test class. I will call it method exec test. And as usual, here we define our annotations, which is run with, and we can use the ZeroCode unit runner class. We need to define a method which corresponds to our scenario. As you know, the methods correspond to the actual scenarios, which is test, let's say test method exec. And here we need to specify that this is a test and make sure that you choose the first one, org.junit. And we need to specify the scenario name here, which is method exec. So method exec, we specify the relatively to this resources folder. So method exec and the name of the file. Method exec, and then the file name, method exec test.json. Now I already started the application, so let me run the app, test. And let's see. Well, it obviously passes because we do not have any assertions, but I wanted to show you how response is returned. So we get this response, right? So we get here 25. This is the response. As you can see, we do not have the body keyword here as we had in case of REST, or we don't have the row body or status. Here we just have plain value here, right? Now, if I write something like this, for example, row body, as we had, for example, in case of SOAP, row body equals 25, this will fail. And see why it fails. Because as you can see here, row body with the actual value now. We don't have a row body here. Why is that? Well, in case of REST and SOAP, we dealt with HTTP requests and responses, right? In this case, we don't have HTTP requests and responses. Therefore, we don't have the body, or we don't have the status, or we don't have the headers. It just returned the plain value. But we want to be able to reference these values in our assertion blocks, right? How can we reference it? Well, instead of returning just a value, we can return a map. And maps are very, very easily serialized in JSON object. And also JSON objects are very, very easily deserialized into maps. So let me define a map here. So map. The key will be string and the value will be integer. I will call it, let's say, a wrapper. Call it wrapper. New hash map. And let me import this class. I will call it int res for result. And I will put this result here in the map. And the key, let's say I will name it result and res. Now when the framework, obviously we need to return the wrapper here. And also we need to change this type, return type. So I'll just copy this. Now when the framework returns this map, we can access our value with the key result. So let me just run it to show you. And we will change this in a second. Now if I scroll down, as you can see, now this is the response, right? The framework took this map as we had with the key result and with our value, and it serialized in a JSON object. So now we can reference our result with the key result. Okay, so let me change it here. Result, and let's run it. And it passes, obviously, because the result is 25. I can pretty much name anything I want. I can name A, B, C, D if I want to. But make sure that this name, and let me actually split vertically here. This name here, and this name should be the same. Okay, make sure that those are the same. So now if I put ABC, what did I put it? ABCD, if I wanted to, and I run it, it should pass. And as you can see, it passes. So this is a very simple example how you can execute a method in a class. So now what happens if you have multiple parameters, right? For example, if we have, let's say, int b, for example, with 2 parameters, how can we pass multiple parameters here? Well, you might think, let's define an object here with a equals 5 and let's say b equals 10, something like that. And let's see actually what we get. Obviously, I don't do anything with this b. I just want to show you what happens. And it failed. Why is it? It cannot execute, basically it logs the exception. It cannot execute this method. Why is that? By default, ZeroCode tries to map this entire request, this entire JSON object, to this first parameter. And obviously it cannot map this entire request body to this single parameter. Now, how can we try to map it? Well, here also comes maps to the rescue. We can actually define a map here where the key is string and the value is integer. I can call it input. And now ZeroCode can deserialize this JSON object into our map. And our map will contain two parameters. One will be A and the second one will be B. So what can we do here? We basically can get A here. So input get A. And I can also get A here. We don't do anything with B. Obviously, you can do anything you want with B. And if I run it, it should be okay. And as you can see, the test passed. We don't have any errors. So this is how you can execute a method with multiple parameters using ZeroCode. Okay, this is all for now. I'll see you in the next one.